the night the gates of Kensington Palace closed for the last time behind her. The world believed the story had reached its tragic end. Flashbulbs dimmed. Crowds whispered through tears. A princess had lived beneath relentless scrutiny, and now she was gone. But inside a quiet legal office in London, a different kind of silence lingered. On a polished desk lay a document that would shape the future of her legacy, a will written not in spectacle, but in intention, because Princess Diana did leave her estate to someone, and that someone was her eldest son, Prince William. At first glance, it sounds predictable. Of course a mother would leave her fortune to her children. Of course a royal estate would pass to the heir. But when you look closer at the timing, the structure, and the emotional weight of that decision, it becomes something far more powerful than tradition. Diana was only 36 when her life ended. 36, young enough to still be searching, old enough to understand exactly how fragile the world around her truly was in her final years. She was no longer simply the Princess of Wales. She was a global humanitarian, a mother fiercely protective of her sons, and a woman who had learned, sometimes painfully, that institutions do not always shield the vulnerable. Those close to her recalled late-night conversations filled with concern for William and his younger brother, Prince Harry. She worried about the pressures they would face, the expectations, the loneliness that can exist even in the grandest palaces. But William, as the future king, carried a different weight. He was not just her son. He was the future of the monarchy. When Diana structured her will, she ensured that the majority of her estate would ultimately benefit her sons. But with William positioned at the center of that responsibility, her assets were placed into trust, carefully managed until the boys reached adulthood. Over time, control and inheritance would transfer, and as the eldest, William would carry the primary stewardship of what she left behind. Why does that matter? Because Diana understood symbolism better than anyone. By entrusting her estate to William, she wasn't simply transferring wealth. She was anchoring her legacy to the future king. She was ensuring that her voice, her compassion, her defiance of cold tradition, her fierce humanity, would live within the very heart of the institution that had once constrained her. Imagine William at 15 years old, walking behind his mother's coffin before a watching world. The cameras captured composure, but inside, a child processing unimaginable loss. Now imagine that same boy, years later, sitting across from legal advisors as the trusts matured, reading documents written in his mother's handwriting, seeing her intentions preserved in clauses and signatures. What does that feel like? Is it comfort, pressure, a reminder of who you must become? Diana's estate was estimated at tens of millions of pounds after taxes and adjustments. Jewelry, personal belongings, investments, but also intangible influence. Her image, her story, her unfinished work, and by design. That influence would pass through William. There's a quiet brilliance in that decision. Diana knew the monarchy would continue long after her. She knew headlines fade. But she also knew that William would grow into a role unlike any other. A king shaped not only by royal protocol, but by the empathy of a mother who knelt to hold the hands of AIDS patients when others hesitated. If her fortune had been fragmented or absorbed into institutional channels, her personal legacy might have softened at the edges, but by centering it within her son's future authority, she ensured something radical. Her humanity would sit beside the crown. Over the years, observers began noticing something subtle in William's public life: a focus on mental health advocacy, a willingness to speak openly about grief, a determination to modernize the monarchy's image. Were these solely his own convictions? Of course. But can anyone deny the imprint of his mother? Diana once said she wanted her sons to experience the real world. She took them to theme parks, to fast food restaurants, to homeless shelters. She showed them life beyond palace walls. And when she wrote her will, she was likely thinking about more than finances. She was thinking about the kind of man William would become. Picture this: a quiet evening at Kensington Palace years later. William reviewing charitable initiatives tied to his mother's memory, deciding which causes to amplify, which partnerships to support. The inheritance is no longer numbers on paper. It is responsibility. And here's the emotional twist. By placing her estate in William's future hands, Diana may have done something profound. She bound her legacy to the evolution of the monarchy itself. If William leads with compassion, her influence grows. If he modernizes with courage, her spirit echoes. If he prioritizes humanity over image, the world remembers where that lesson began. That changes everything. Because Diana's story has often been framed as a clash with the institution, a rebel princess against rigid tradition. But through her will, she may have quietly ensured that change would come from within, not through confrontation, but through inheritance. There is something deeply moving about that. A mother who endured public heartbreak, who felt isolated inside a system built on stoicism, who understood better than anyone how cold it could feel behind palace doors. And yet, instead of turning away, she invested her trust in the very future of that system. Her son had read her narrative entirely. This wasn't a woman seeking revenge. It was a woman shaping tomorrow. And what about Harry? He too benefited from the trust, receiving his share upon reaching adulthood. But William, as the elder and future sovereign, carried the symbolic weight of primary stewardship. The estate's structure ensured fairness, but the future ensured leadership. As the years passed, both sons publicly honored their mother. Statues unveiled, foundations established, speeches delivered with voices that sometimes trembled when her name was spoken. But watch William closely during those moments. There is a particular stillness in him when Diana is mentioned. A pause, as if he understands that her memory is not just personal, it is historical. He is not only grieving a mother, he is carrying a legacy. And that is what makes her decision so powerful. Because inheritance is never just about possession, it's about direction. Diana left behind more than wealth. She left behind expectation, hope, a blueprint for empathy. Inside an ancient institution, by choosing William as the central heir of her estate, she may have been asking a silent question of the future. Can you lead differently? Can you rule with heart? Can you remember what I tried to teach you when the cameras weren't watching? Today, as Prince William steps further into his role as Prince of Wales and future king, those questions feel more relevant than ever. The monarchy stands at a crossroads between tradition and transformation. Public trust shifts, generations change, and through it all, Diana's influence remains woven into the fabric of that future. So yes, she left her estate to her son, but more importantly, she left him something intangible: the mandate to humanize power, the courage to show vulnerability, the reminder that compassion can exist within crowns and castles. In the end, the real story isn't about money. It's about a mother who understood that the greatest way to shape the future is to place it in the hands of someone you love and trust them to carry your light forward.